Thank you, Sam. No chalky bars here, just black coffee for tonight. Anyway, back on to more serious matters. The BBC is scrapping hundreds of jobs and even prosecuting a cancer patient for unpaid licence fee as it struggles to balance the books amid falling revenues. But GB News can exclusively reveal tonight that despite tightening the purse strings elsewhere, 6 top executives at the cash-strapped Beeb were given big, fat pay rises in the last 12 months. In total, the BBC's Executive Committee pay packet went from £3.2 million in 2022-2023 to £4.18 million in 23-24. So Charlotte Moore, Chief Content Officer, whose £26,000 pay rise took her salary to £468,000. Lee Tavazia, the Group Chief Operating Officer, whose £25,000 pay rise took him to £442,000. Keris Bright, the Chief Customer Officer, whose £13,000 pay rise took her to an annual salary of £380,000. Tom Fussell, the Chief Executive Officer of BBC Studios, who enjoyed a £15,000 pay rise to £465,000, whopping figures. And Gautam Rangajan, Group Director of Strategy and Performance, who enjoyed a massive £31,000 pay rise to £465,000. And last but not least, Rodri Davies, the Director of Nations, what does they do? Whose £14,000 pay rise took him to £293,000 a year. So, all right for some. But meanwhile, at the BBC, they're cutting a further 500 jobs by March 2026. And they've also opened a round of voluntary redundancies amid, quote, serious pressure on its finances. Its public service headcount has already gone down by almost 10% in the past 5 years, as revenues for BBC Group were down 6% to £5.4 billion for the year to March 2024. And crucially, get this, licence fee income was down £3.7 billion, that's 2% year on year, with more than 500,000 fewer households now paying the annual telly tax. Meanwhile, as the BBC Fat Cats enjoyed bumper pay rises, it's been revealed a cancer patient was prosecuted and given a £120 fine for failing to pay for his TV licence whilst he was in hospital receiving medical treatment. The man, who lives in Wales, was on a simple payment plan of £18 a month to pay for the licence fee. However, whilst he was undergoing surgery at the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital for prostate cancer, the direct debit didn't go through. The Taxpayers Alliance said it was time for Auntie to axe the TV licence and stand on her own 2 feet. Let's get the thoughts of tonight's panel. Former BBC Chief Political Correspondent John Sargent, political consultant Suzanne Evans and entrepreneur and social commentator Joanna Jarju. Here we go, another mini workout session. John Sargent, let's start with you as a former BBC man. Massive pay rises for their execs, some up to 30, 40 grand a year, all while cutting headcounts, scrapping programmes and prosecuting cancer patients for not paying their licence fee.
I've looked at those increases. The first two, Charlotte Moore, her salary has gone up, I reckon, by 6% roughly. The next one down, the Group Chief Operating Officer, also about 6%. Would you regard 6% pay increase as a big, fat pay rise?
When you're already paid $400k a year, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, John,
right.
you know, she had a 26k increase.
Right,
that's the salary of 2 people on minimum wage.
I know.
What do these people do?
Don't you think the percentage makes any difference at all?
No, I don't really. Not when you're at that level, honestly. I'm shocked that anyone, any management at the BBC is earning nearly £500,000, particularly Chief Content Officer. I don't know exactly what the job situation...
It's a huge organisation.
Job description is for that.
What does the head of Nations...
It's just interesting talking about big fat pay rises. You think, oh, we'll get a percentage now. We'll get a sort of, that's a 40% pay rise. No, it isn't. It's about 6%. John, now, can I just continue to make my point? Can we just give us a bit of a chance now? The public sector rises that we've heard about, which are in the pipeline, which the government are considering and they think they'll probably agree to, for nurses and for various other people in the public sector, those increases are between 5 and 6%. The difficulty the BBC has is that these people on these salaries are in a very competitive market. They can go from the BBC...
That's what they always say.
That's what they say about presenters all the time.
No, they say, wait a minute, they say that, you say they always say it, because they're right. People who leave the BBC, I was one of those who did leave the BBC, BBC. My salary doubled, and I was given a sports car to work for ITV. So I know a bit about what it's like to go from the BBC salary
So you see, it's interesting,
to
isn't
ITV.
it? Because
but the idea that these people couldn't get jobs elsewhere at that level, they would.
Joanna? Sorry, Suzanne, I'll come back to you. Joanna, let's have Joanna have a word.
OK, so the rate of pay, I don't think is as shocking as what you think, Suzanne. It's a huge organisation. At the end of the day, these people are at the top of it. My problem is that when you look at the state of the BBC at the moment, and if you're losing money, and especially if you care about the people who work for you, and you've got, you know, cutting 500 jobs, and then you're also having other jobs as well that are open to redundancy, it's a big slap in the face, I think, to be able to walk through the halls knowing that you're the one that's actually got the pay rises,
the voice of common
and
sense,
face
Joanna.
people. I think that's the problem. It's the timing of it rather than what they're actually getting paid. Of course it's competitive, but I also don't think that there's some kind of big trade union movement that's happening when you're making over 400k. I think it's completely different as well when it comes to doctors and nurses. When you look at their rate of pay and when you look at the amount of work and the type of work that they do, I think they deserve a pay rise. But realistically, being a top exec in a cushy job, I don't think that they're working the type of hours that doctors who have trained for way longer than these people...
I mean, what does the head of nations do, John? What is that job? Does he sit there counting how many nations are in the UK?
Answer the point that Joanna's
Well, can you answer that? Do you know the answer to that question?
I'll do that in a moment. I'll try to do everything I can. I don't quite know why it's me that's being pinioned for
this.
Well,
you're the former Beeb man, that's why.
No, I left the BBC 24 years ago, but anyway...
you defend them passionately enough.
I'm very happy to defend the BBC in general. As far as this is concerned... Joanna's saying that, what terrible timing. These are called the annual accounts. That gives you a bit of a clue. It's every year these things come out at the same time. Wait a moment. At the same time, it's also agreed that they will say what the main characters in the BBC, what they're earning. They didn't in the past, but that's what they do now.
Yeah, so you're right.
So, right now, your point was what? That...
What's the head of nations do?
What was the head of these descriptions?
Why is it worth over 400 grand a year?
The head of nations...
he's only not on 300 even.
From what I understand, it's to make sure that you cover... So, for example, when they're doing commissioning and things like that, that it's fair and that they're allocating particular, you know, budgets and things like that to make sure that people in Wales are getting the programming, etc.
Suzanne, the truth is, at the time when they're chasing cancer patients who haven't paid their couple of quid licence fee...
That's a separate argument.
No, it's not. It's not,
really,
John. They're meant to be, John. They're meant to be skins.
No. It is a completely separate argument as to how you raise the money that the BBC has to spend. Then you say, and what is the BBC doing with that expenditure? Well, if you muddle them up, then, of course, it means that there are more cancer patients who are on reduced fees. You'd have to affect the...
But that's not the point. OK, so can I just say something really quickly? So the Group Director of Strategy and Performance, and to say that the performance isn't going very well, has had about a 30k pay rise. So it's like, well, it's not going very well.
They're losing. They've got 10% reduction in staff.
Can I just say, John, you know, I worked as a lowly BBC reporter. They took the view, totally contrary to top management, we've got to pay them lots or they'll leave us. With the lowly journalists, they say, umpteen people want to step into your job, you'll keep your salary low, or else somebody else will
400k a year, nearly $500,000 a year, 300k a year, all while, you know, you're ditching your staff, your hard-working staff.
So if you work for Thames Water, you can have, what, several million pounds a year, and that's it.
Thames Water's a private company.
I admire your defence of the indefensible. John Sargent, Joanna Georgiou, thank you. A BBC spokesperson told us tonight we've been clear that while the BBC is getting smaller, we also need to attract and retain world-class staff. Our salaries are below the market rates for other UK broadcasters and the wider media industry. But like most organisations, if individuals are promoted or take on more responsibilities, then that is reflected in their pay.